retirees that would want a fixed income, right? And so these retirees would just simply say, okay, we'll pay you cash money of, you know, $10 million for this particular asset, and their development cost and total acquisition cost might have been substantially less than that. So as an example, let's just say that we've got a situation of where they buy the land for $1 million. They put, let's say, $6 million worth of improvements on that land in terms of the building. All right, meaning they have a total investment of $7 million. Okay, in the property. So this would be, once again, imagine I'm CVS, Walgreens, some other retailer. This is what I have done. Okay, I have my own site selection team. I have my own construction team. I have my own, you know, basically get everything ready for occupancy. Building is open for business. All right, and now I am saying I want to sell the building, but I'm not going to sell it for $7 million. I'm going to sell it for a profit. Okay, because now it's an operating concern, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell it for, let's say, $10 million. Okay. In return, I am going to engage in a long-term 30-year lease with, in essence, a 5% rate of return to the purchaser. Okay. Now, you know, this could be calculated a couple different ways, but at a minimum, you could just sort of say, all right, this purchaser just spent $10 million on buying this building from me, and we're going to be guaranteeing them a 5% or $500,000 a year sort of rate of return. Does that make sense? Yes or no? On that $10 million investment. Now, we could potentially go ahead, and if we want to kind of set it up in another way from the ownership perspective, and saying, all right, well, if we want to look at it kind of from the perspective that the person that's purchasing this, they're getting this lease for the next 30 years, so we could kind of almost look at it as sort of a loan, and so we could say $10 million as our loan amount for 30 years, 5% interest rate, and the payment that maybe we would need to achieve based on that.
This is on a one payment per year, right?
No, this one we're going to go ahead and do on monthly. Okay. Payment. So our monthly payment would be $53,682.16 times 12, or $644,185.95. Okay, and so in essence, you know, we can kind of look at it very similarly, that we're in essence financing this with them for the next 30 years and having to give them that 5% rate of return. And that's really what the actual annual cost affiliated with it would be. Okay? Now, but here's the part that begins to get interesting. We made a $3 million profit on the sale of this. Okay? So we can look at this a variety of different ways, depending on how you want to kind of conceptualize it. What do we do with that $3 million?
If we lease it, we have to pay.
Well, we're going to start paying rent, obviously, but we'd also use that $3 million in a couple different ways. We could, number one, buy all the inventory for the store. We could also use it to potentially start building another store, you know, in terms of moving on and expanding, because we freed up the cash. Or, you know, could come up with some other, you know, way to use that money. But the point being is, it's a great way to kind of, you know, for rapid expansion to be able to do so without having to take on all the debt, technically, for your firm. Now, a significant amount of this began to change, you know, a few years ago, and those of you taking the accounting course with San Miguel, you talked about Sarbanes-Oxley, you talked about like Enron and all that sort of stuff, and specifically as it relates to how you go about classifying debt versus classifying long-term lease obligations, okay? Well, before Sarbanes-Oxley, you really didn't have to fully account for or disclose in the same way those long-term lease obligations as really a long-term financial liability, okay, in the same way you do now. And so this has had a little bit of an impact in the sense that these are not quite as popular as what they once were, primarily for some of these sort of disclosure reasons, but you still, they are still attractive because they do at least not burden the company with all of that debt, okay? Even though a long-term financial obligation could be viewed as debt, it's still probably viewed a little bit more favorable, okay? Questions, thoughts, observations? Okay, so you could, another way of even looking at this, that okay, if we take that $3 million profit and we're in essence maybe having to make payments to these folks for $644,000 a year, we take that $3 million divided by 644,185, and so what we're basically saying is if we wanted to, we could avoid having to pay rent for the next 4.65 years, just with the profit off of the project, okay? So that, you know, obviously has another advantage in the sense that it would allow us to, you know, get the property up, stabilized, you know, in terms of customer base and so forth, so on, before we really have to worry about turning a profit, so to speak.
I'm sorry to go back. I was trying to catch up on notes and I missed it. What, the 649,000, what are we solving for there? Is that the annual rent
This
that
in
needs to be
essence,
paid to get your 5% return as the buyer?
effectively, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Moving on. All right. Oops. Okay, interest only loans. This will go quick. Okay, interest-only loans, as we talked about at the very beginning of the semester, this is the whole idea. You borrow a bag full of money, all you pay back is the interest, you don't pay back any principal, and at the end of the loan term, you still owe the same amount that you borrowed, okay? Very simply put. Now, if we simply say something like, all right, we borrowed $15 million, and our interest rate was 5%. Okay. That means our interest for the year is $750,000. Okay, is everybody cool with that? Yes or no? But what is our monthly interest? Okay, now here's the interesting thing about interest-only loans. We don't have to worry about compounding because there's basically nothing to compound because we're not paying off any of the principal. So in this case, our monthly payment on an interest-only loan would simply be taking that divided by 12, or 62,500 would be your monthly payment on the interest-only loan. Okay, now to see if you're paying attention. What's my loan balance going to be at the end of 5 years?
What the whole amount is 15 million?
15 million. Okay? So the whole idea, I don't pay off anything. All I'm doing is paying interest. Okay? From 1 month to the next, 1 year to the next. All right? Now, why would you get a loan like this? Well, in some cases, construction loans may be set up this way as interest-only loans. And the part of the idea behind the interest-only loan is that you're minimizing your payments.
Because you're gonna sell.
Because you're potentially going to sell, or that's all you can afford, you know, and so you're trying to minimize your payments. Where these begin to get you in trouble is, you know, like for a situation, you get a home loan that was an interest-only loan, and they were all kinds of these in 2005, 6, 7, and were just wacky products that they were offering up to consumers and saying, hey, we're going to give you an interest-only home loan, and it's all predicated on your value of your home increasing over time, and everything's going to be great because it's going to give you a low monthly payment because you're not paying back any principal, you're just paying that interest. But the problem is, well, what if the value of that home goes down? Now all of a sudden you have to sell it and you're going to lose a ridiculous amount of money.
But if you're going to flip or at the next.
Yeah, but if you're going to, yeah, exactly. But if you're going to flip or move on, then interest only makes sense. Okay, moving forward. We're almost there. Accrual loans. Now my suspicion is you've never heard of these, or at least not in the context of how they're actually presented. An accrual loan is one where you're going to achieve negative amortization automatically as part of the deal. Okay? And you're saying, why would you do this? And why, what's happening here? All right. So you're going to have a couple of different rates on this loan. You're going to have what is referred to as a pay rate, and you're going to have what is referred to as an accrual rate. Now, the pay rate is always going to be less. So the pay rate, let's say, is going to be 2%, and the accrual rate is maybe going to be 5%. So what's going to happen here is you're going to be making payments as a borrower on what you're perceiving as a 2% loan, but the reality is you owe the lender 5%. Okay? Now, in other words, let me put you another way. The lender is basically saying to you, yet again, I'm going to give you this great upfront deal at a low interest rate, the pay rate, but that's the rate that you're going to be paying. But at the end of a year, end of 5 years, you're going to have accrued interest on the 5% rate. So you're going to owe more than you borrow, okay? You're saying, wait a second, why in the world would I do something like this? Yet again, it comes down to the situation of that you're getting a lower interest rate up front and you're expecting the value of the asset, whatever it is, to increase in value over time. And so even though you're accruing that extra debt, you're maybe not overly concerned with it because it's something that's out there looming in the future, okay? That makes sense.
But you have to, if you sell or whatever, at a certain point, you still have to pay that balance with that more rate.
Correct,
right?
correct. So here's how you're going to approach this as kind of the way to think about it. So let's say we get our $100,000 loan. Okay, so what we're going to do, 100,000 present value, and we're going to put in, let's say, I don't know, 15-year term, and we're going to put in 5% as an interest rate. We're going to find out what is our payment. Then we're going to put in 2%. Oops, is our interest rate. Find out what our payment is. Okay, so start with that. Okay, so that's the first little piece of this. Now, let's think about this conceptually. Let's say that we're going to pay off this loan at the end of 5 years. How much are we going to owe? Don't put this in your calculator yet. I want you to think about this. I'm purposely setting it up this way to see if you are following the logic. So, assume that we're going to pay off this loan at the end of 5 years. How much are we going to owe the lender? And what is it going to be based on?
You're gonna be based on the 5%.
Okay, it's going to be based on the 5% in the sense that,
The balance you're gonna pay at the end.
yes, but the payment that we're actually going to be making is going to be at 2%. All right? All right, so okay, just follow me forward. All right, so let's just do this to kind of illustrate. So we kind of go back up to this just for a moment. You don't have to do this on your calculator. I just want to sort of show you. So let's just say we put in 1 input, 60, shift, amortize, equal, equal, equal. And we get the balance for that one. And then we were to come down here and do this one. Same thing. Okay. We've already got that one put in. Let's go do that one. 160, shift, amortize, equal. So for this one, I get 69,936, oops, 37. Okay, now for the other one, $74,557.09. Okay, so this, for the moment, we're just making the assumption these are two independent loans separated from each other. Just what would be the balance at the end of each of these loans with normal payments, okay? We've done nothing weird or funky yet, okay? Now, so what we're going to be doing is you're going to, in essence, be saying, all right, let us go forward, calculate what our payment is going to be here, but replace the payment here with this, then solve for what the balance is going to be. Okay, so let me show you the keystrokes that we're talking about. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to, so starting from scratch, 12 payments per year. You're going to put in the 100,000. You're going to put in the 15 years. And then you're going to put in the 5% interest rate. You're going to go ahead and solve for the payment, and that is going to give you the $790.79. Okay, so that's exactly the same setup that we start with. Okay, now what we are going to do, since we know what the payment is for the 2%, we are going to pop that in here as 643.51 plus minus as our new payment.
So we just, everything, or we just do a new payment?
The new payment, then we do the one input 60 shift amortize equal, and see what we get. $84,573.27. Okay? So what is happening is, in essence, because we are only making payments based on a 2% pay rate for our accrual rate at 5%, you see what the difference in the balance is. That the normal balance for the 5% loan would have been $74,557, but because we have not been making those full payments, we are accruing an extra roughly 10 grand that we're going to now have to pay off at the end of that 5 years. Does that make sense conceptually, yes or no? Okay.
Of course, we have to miss payments, so we have to end paying more. We actually pay less than the 790. So of course, we're gonna owe more at the end of the loan, which is gonna be based on this.
Well, you're going to be owing more as your balance because of this additional accrual. Okay? That's the reason why we are making the distinction between the pay rate of what we're paying, the accrual rate of what the bank is really charging us. Okay? One more way for the lenders to make more money. Yay. Okay.
The shortage on the payment there,
Yep.
the 100 and whatever bucks a month, is that going back to your principal? And you're being charged on that difference that you're not paying?
In essence, yeah. I mean, in other words, it's basically saying you're shorting the lender by 100 or something bucks a month, and what is the impact of that going to be at the end of the payoff? All right. Ugh.
Question, wait, before you go on. At 4351, we're not factoring that into the calculation.
Here we are,
How are we putting it in after the 70?
right here. We're putting it in. In other words, no, you're not adding it. You're just, in other words, once you solve for what the payment was, here's what's happening. Let me make sure this is clear to you.
Yeah.
Your calculator, in essence, is building a kind of like a spreadsheet in its own memory bank. And so once you hit this initial payment, what it is doing is, for the 790.79, what it is doing at that moment, whenever you hit this initial payment right then and there, is it is setting up and populating an entire Excel, if you will, sort of like spreadsheet with here are what the the payments are, here's what the balance is, all that sort of stuff. And what you are now doing is you're saying, okay, I want you to replace what that payment was with this new one that's lower, and then readjust everything.
So you just put in the 643.
Yes. Okay. Moving forward. Okay. Ooh, behind's good. Okay, let me speed up a little bit. All right. We got two more little things to kind of. All right, convertible mortgages. We really have a whole lot on this one, remember, it's no computations. All right. Any idea what a convertible mortgage is? All right. Basically, a convertible mortgage gives the lender an option to purchase a full or partial interest in the property at the end of a specified period of time. Okay, convertible mortgage is one that gives the lender an option to purchase a full or partial interest in the property at the end of a specified period of time. So what does that mean? It gives the lender an option to purchase a full or partial interest of the loan. Okay?
But isn't that like somebody buy a house or a home and then somebody else buy from it?
Okay, what they're able to do is, once again, they're able to, in essence, become kind of an equity participant.
So if the property appreciates significantly, then they have the right to, they're sort of gonna take advantage of that situation?
Yes, precisely. In other words, the lender has at some point maybe the right to sort of step in and say, oh, this property's gone up a whole bunch in value, so we're not gonna convert this loan into a situation of where I'm able to buy it at maybe a predetermined price at a certain point in time. Does that make sense?
Like, it could be like Miami Beach, for example, where it's like, it could be 3 or 4 times what the original loan was, rather than just like, you know, a 50% gain.
Yeah, and it could be set up as like maybe a right of first refusal. You know, the lender is simply saying, 5 years into the future, you know, I reserve to purchase this property for X dollar value from you, and you've got to at least approach me first before potentially offering it up to anybody else at a set price. Okay? All right. Lastly, mezzanine loan, or mezz debt. All right. Mezzanine loan, first of all, where does it get its name? Mezzanine, okay? Any of you that have ever been to a nice hotel, they typically have a floor that's referred to as the mezzanine, okay? What is that floor? It's kind of an intermediary floor. So in other words, it's not the lobby, it's not where the rooms are, it's kind of the in-between floor, it's kind of, you know, that middle ground. Well, in the world of real estate and the world of finance, mezzanine debt is kind of a middle ground between pure debt and pure equity, all right? Pure debt is obviously the money you're borrowing from the bank. Pure equity is the money you're getting from yourself and from your business partners. Mezzanine debt is typically you're going to maybe some sort of third-party specialized firm that maybe will allow you as the investor to put in less of your own money, but require a much higher rate of return than your traditional lender, okay? So as an example, you could have a situation like this to where your normal debt is going to be at a 5% interest rate, but your mezz debt might be at 15%, and your equity, you might be requiring a 20% rate of return. Okay, does that make sense just conceptually? Now, the idea though is this mezz player could very well have some say-so in how the project is done. That they're going to be playing a little bit more of a, maybe potentially, an active role in the management, oversight, development, whatever, of the project. But here's the thing. Okay, so this is the cost, if you will, of each of these, or the return, cost or return. All right? But then, in terms of the overall contribution, and what we mean by that, like in debt terms, like loan to value, okay? So let's say that the traditional debt is an 80% loan to value. And now the mezz debt, we might be able to get, we'll actually make it the same percentage. So, and then the remaining 5% will be our equity contribution. Okay, so we're basically getting an extra 15% at 15%. Okay, that's just doing it for fun. Okay, But the equity that we are putting in 5% equity, and we're getting a 20% rate of return. All right, so now looking at this, we can approach this a variety of different ways, but if I were to ask you something like, what's my overall cost of capital on this deal? Okay, what would you have to do? You basically do a weighted average. All right, so in essence, you'd be basically taking to come up with a weighted average cost of capital. All right, so 0.05 times 80 would be 4, 5 times 15, 2.25, 2 times 5, 1 plus 2.25 plus 4. All right, so in essence, by going through and doing a weighted average cost of capital, what we're saying is that the overall project return would need to be a 7.25% or higher based upon these 3 different sources of capital with their relative contributions. Does that make sense, everybody? Yes or no? Okay, but obviously the contributions column, if we're going to call it that, needs to total up to be 100%. Okay, now what these are in terms of the cost and the rate of return, those are just going to be dictated by the market in the sense of, well, what is my cost of debt, what's my cost of mezzanine financing, what is my equity percent, okay? Questions, thoughts, observations on that?
Is that overall 7.25%, is that the number you're referring back to for your return when you're deciding if you're meeting a certain cap rate, or, I mean, does that back into a cap rate like when you're purchasing?
To a certain extent, that's really what it is.
Yeah, right.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's really all you're really saying. It's kind of like your cap rate.
Make sure you got a positive spread between that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Thoughts, questions, observations? Okay. All right. Now, I could parse this out a little bit to kind of throw a little bit of extra flavor into it, and I could just simply say, all right, let's ignore our equity piece here for a second. All right, and I could just simply say, what is my effective cost of borrowing? You follow? Not necessarily my overall cost of capital, but my cost of borrowing. That would only be my debt and my mezzanine piece. So in essence, that, my cost of debt plus mezzanine would now be 6.25. Well, sort of. They're close enough for our purposes. Okay. All right, let's do this. Let's take a quiz. All righty. Pop your name on this thing. Okay, let's see where it is. out of the quizzes, I would rate this one as moderate. I wouldn't say, there's some questions on here that are ridiculously easy, and then there's a couple on here that are a little bit more challenging. Everybody got a copy?